myself out.
I am afraid of...
I'm terrified and paralyzed by...
I am deathly afraid of...
Welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast with your host, me, Ryan Perio. Hello and welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Perio. This week, my guest is Clairvoyant Jess, and in this episode, we talk about her gift of clairvoyancy and how she uses it to help people find closure, being a single mom, and then we get into her fear of acceptance. So let's get into that interview right now with Clairvoyant Jess. All right. My guest this week is Clairvoyant Jess. That's an amazing title. So, Jessica, how did you become a clairvoyant? Like, when did you discover, I guess, this ability that...
I've had it since birth. I recognized it at a very early age, seeing things that others did not. But I buried it for most of my life out of just really fear, along with just being in the Bible Belt and it not really being accepted. Mm-hmm. So it was something that I kind of opened and closed for the majority of my life.
Yeah, that is kind of a thing too with parents, because they condition it. Kind of, you get conditioned to this is just a phase, or there's all that conditioning thing of it's a phase. She'll grow out of it, and
overactive imagination.
Yeah, and they just they get frustrated and tell you to stop, or it's always they're just doing their best, and unfortunately, yep. It's just it was a simpler time, and it was just simpler answers to the unknown questions.
Yes, that's definitely my after now that it's of course it's being accepted by my mother at this point. It was more along hers of just I didn't know what to tell you. I didn't know how to tell you to deal with it, so that was my response.
Yeah. So what was can you remember what your first, I guess, instance was? Like, what was, be more specific at what happened?
It was an Indian chief. He was in full Indian headdress. He wore, the traditional, I guess, Indian, wear, and was more of like a ceremonial type wear. And he would keep a hatchet at his chest. And he would rotate between my bedroom door, my sisters, and my brothers. And he did that for a long, long time until one night he actually came in and he put his hand on my shoulder, which was rather alarming to have happen. And I actually now understand that it was him choosing me.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, in a way, yes, that is absolutely terrifying. And, just, I guess it's almost, I would say, sensory overload for someone your age to experience that. I mean, it's great that he chose you, but it's like, can you wait until I kind of have a grasp of what's going on before you choose me? Don't choose me when I'm I'm totally unaware of what's happening. And I can't imagine that, because that's got to be so real. And then it's so alarming because only you can see this, and it's
right.
That is absolute, it's cool, but at the same time, the worst possible outcome of that power is just I'm suffering in silence because no one here sees what I'm seeing, or at least it would be nice to have a sibling or something could also see it, and we can kind of. You saw that, right?
Yeah, and my sister was aware of it. So she actually did recognize it also. But it just seemed to draw more to me than her. So
yeah. And are you the youngest, or are you a middle?
Actually, she's the youngest.
Okay.
So yeah.
Maybe just sometimes I think maybe since you may have maybe, I guess, didn't push it down and explored it, it may have, I guess, maybe opened you up more to it. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think that we're all born with the gifts. I think everyone's born with some level of it. the conditioning that we receive that puts those barriers up,
Yeah.
because then it's what we're told and fed that just kind of encourages us to kind of block those things out as not normal.
Yeah. Or to say, that's not happening, to deny.
Right.
So did you think your parents ever had any of this like gift, or they just like
both of them do?
Okay.
Both of them do, and so does my grandmother. So did my grandmother. So it comes through many bloodlines through the family. So my dad had the gift of his came through dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mother would have would have premonitions or those gut instincts is what they like to call them. And then my grandmother had visions.
Did your grandmother talk to you about the visions? Like, was she like?
She did. Yeah. She was probably the one that actually I could connect with the most because she was open about it. So she shared a lot about her visions and the things that she saw.
Yeah, I was going to ask if maybe like, because a lot of times it's your grandparents, because I guess there's so much hands off and, your time is so finite that you may have been more open and sharing with what they're going through.
Yeah.
You may have been more conducive to listen at that point too, being a kid and spending time with grandma.
Yeah. Yes.
So how have you, so as a clairvoyant, how do you use that now? Do you just help people, I guess, with passing, or?
Now I use it to connect people with the people that have passed. So people that have departed that they need to connect with and possibly hear some messages from. I also am a healer. So I work with energetic healing to help people through any sort of trauma and emotional situations that they possibly just haven't learned how to release. So much of what people experience now, it's kind of, I guess I equate it to if we touch a hot pot, we know how to put the hot pot down, but how do we put down the hot pain?
Yeah. Well, and it's also because in a way you can understand without them having to open up, to pull, you kind of pull the Band-Aid off for them rather than you do a 1, 2, 3 rip, whereas they slowly kind of peel at it, and it's, I'm sure that it's very therapeutic and cathartic. There's the word I was looking for. Like, I feel like that's probably a cathartic moment to just be able to, on a level, connect with somebody without having to go through the whole story and have someone, be like, it's going to be okay. It's got to be super cathartic, because nothing, therapy helps, but at the same time, sometimes you have to relive that trauma to share with a therapist, and sometimes sharing's hard. I'm not the best at sharing feelings and stuff, so it's definitely so beneficial to be able to, I guess, connect and feel like you've released it without having to unpack it.
Right. Yeah. I actually work in tandem with therapists that are at least open to what I do. Many of them actually can see the benefits of the fact that there is stuff that there may be so buried underneath so many different layers of their emotional stuff that they don't even know where to begin. So being able to help them to just kind of, I guess, release that without them having to go through that whole process can be very beneficial.
It's time saving for sure.
Yeah.
So when did you decide you wanted to use your gift, I would say, in this manner, like to help people? When did you, because you could have just, just walked away with it or just kind of kept it to yourself. What I guess prompted you to share?
Trust me, I tried. I tried for a long time. So I say that I guess it was right around what we're looking at about 11 years ago. I became what I would call a closet psychic, where I would share it with people that were brought to me, but I wouldn't really discuss it out to anybody because I just didn't. I dealt with so much with it. So from about, I guess it was about 6 years that I actually continued on that path of just dealing with the people that were brought to me. And I kept being guided spiritually that was not going to work any longer, that I had to come out of the closet.
Okay.
And it was really, honestly, I call it not the dark night of the soul, where you go through a series of just really traumatic events. And it was my father's death. I was going through a divorce, and I was also having to deal with my sister getting put into. I was putting my sister into rehab, and all within about a 30-day period. And that's kind of when the gift kind of opened up. And then as I went along and kept trying to keep it to myself, they kept warning that I was going to have to take it, and I chose not to. And they said it was either their way or my way. And then it was like, we're not going to allow you to take this path. And I actually lost my first ever corporate career. And it was one of those things that out of being a necessity of a single parent, that I had to actually make something happen. Mm-hmm. So I launched 2 businesses out of necessity about 5 years ago. And one was refurbishing furniture. The other one was I talked to dead people. Okay. And it seemed that people found it more interesting that I talked to dead people.
Huh. But I mean, that's such a great survival tool that you were able to, okay, here. Not only that, like, I wonder if maybe all of that happening at once just, did something maybe emotionally to you to where you were more open to, I guess, your gifts, as you say.
Yes. I say that when the dark night of the soul happens, it's like the blinders fly off. Mm-hmm. So all the blinders that I've been able to put up to ignore it for so long, I couldn't put them back on anymore.
Yeah.
It was where there was no ability to kind of put those blinders on and make it to where I couldn't see any longer. And I had to actually just take the path.
Yeah. And I couldn't imagine dealing with all that in a 30-day, just stress upon stress upon stress, and it just never seeming to end. I can see how that would be like, just something like I need something that's me, like almost that's something that's personal to myself, that I alone, that I need to do something for me. And
yep.
Refinishing furniture is probably it's a fun hobby. Like when you can hit that antique chest and sand it down, just the, I guess, the methodicalness and the detail, and just it can be very therapeutic. But at the same time, not having that's you're in a large pond of people that are doing that as a hobby.
Mm-hmm. You are, and it's not the same as what the other is, and it's
Yeah, very few people, and I mean, but it's also it's helping give closure in just like refinishing furniture. You're refinishing people's lives because they don't have you stand away basically their guilt that maybe they left things unsaid with their loved ones, or they just need something for their own benefit to take that next step forward and not look back at their life with them. And so that's an amazing gift to have. And whether people believe it or not, I mean, I believe that there's things that are needed. I've had dreams where if I have a dream of being in a car wreck, I won't drive the next day, because it has come true too many times on my life that I've been like, yep, heard you, whatever. Universal spirits are telling me not to take my car today. And so I totally feel like sometimes, there is more to it. And maybe, the link that we're linked to may not be there, but we were linked to something. And it's just too much and there. And I mean, you just can't explain it. There's no scientific answer for if I dream of being in a car wreck and then I'm in a car wreck the next day because I drove. Okay, we'll explain how that happened. How did my mind was telling me not to drive. Like it was right. So how do you explain that this is all just some big coincidence? I don't buy that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's I think that if for the people that are Christian, that listen, that pay attention to the Bible, I mean, it says that he knows every hair on our head, and he has a direct connection to each and every one of us. I mean, so, or if you're any sort of spiritual literature, it all talks about the fact that we have a divine connection, mm-hmm. No matter what what I guess religion or topic it may be under. So if if they remember that we can tap into that connection at any time if you choose to. Mm-hmm. It's just then your choice in connecting to it. And the more that we listen to it, the stronger it actually becomes. So when we actually listen and say, okay, I got a dream last night that was not to drive the next day, or it was going to be in an accident, that strengthens that connection. So where we actually will get more of those messages and more so that we actually are being guided divinely.
Yeah. And I just feel like, so, it's not telling you that you're supposed to die or, that you cheated death. It's just telling you, hey, I feel like time, there is a plan, but it doesn't mean that it's set in stone.
Right.
That you can slightly alter the plan, and they're like, oh, you know what? Noted. And then it's almost like your Apple Maps when you choose a no tools route or something, like, oh, it just reformats you to your destination and
just reroutes it.
Yeah, recalculating. And and so I totally believe that. And am I religious? Absolutely not. But I do believe, and I try to listen to all religions. I don't try to one is better than the other, but it's just, I'm like, there's too many people that believe there's something out there, or there's too many books of saying that there's a divine power for there not to be.
Right. And that's what I'm accepting and open to all religions, because it's not my place to judge.
Yeah.
So it's I just am open to the divine source.
So what has been, like, I would say, like, your best, like, what's been your favorite clairvoyant moment? Like, what has been one of, I guess, your...
Oh, gosh.
I know there's a lot.
Oh, there is a lot. And that's what I was, like, sitting here thinking was my favorite. I guess, there's so many. And I think that some of my favorites have fallen into those moments that were literally completely unplanned and were not... that the person wasn't expecting it. Those are always, I think, the most, they just are interesting. Just, I guess, I was on vacation at one point with my sister in Florida. We went into a store, and we left the store, and I looked over at my sister, and I was like, you have to turn around. And she, of course, knowing me at this point, she was like, okay. And we go back to the store. She didn't ask any questions. She just knew I had to go back. And the lady looked surprised that it just checked me out, like something was wrong. And I was like, there's nothing wrong. I said, but I do need you for a moment. And I began to tell her things that I was told that she needed to know. And they were all from a man, and it was her husband who had just died.
Wow.
And she was so, she said, you don't know how much I needed this today. And I said, no, I know how much you needed this today, because I just did a U-turn to come back.
Yes, but that's
those are great. I mean, just like even the dentist that I was sitting at one day, and she had finished doing my dental work, and the lady that was the hygienist was about to finish up, and I was like, is the dentist coming back in?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, she didn't need to. And I was like, I need her to.
Okay.
And I gave her some messages that were from her grandfather, and she looks at me and she stands up and she walked out of the room and was crying. I was like, oh God. And the whole staff staring at me, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'll see y'all in 6 months. Right. But I walked out the door because I saw where she had walked out, and I was like, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I did not mean to upset you. I said, but I was told that you had to have that message today. And she was like, then she went on to explain a story about what was going on within their family that day. Like, they had to make a decision that was imperative to be made that day. And she says, if I wouldn't have gotten that message today, I would have decided a different way.
Wow.
And so those were, I think, probably, those are my moments that I think are always just so they're heart touching.
Yeah. I
mean, I'm sure there's plenty of others that I can think, and it's, there's all the ones that are hard to share. There's the ones that are, funny. Because a lot of times they like to bring back some of those entertaining messages that not to forget your underwear, and, the time that they made you pee your pants. And these are all stories that I've literally said to clients, and I'm like, this is really what you want me to tell them? And they're like, they'll get it.
But, there are people, I get that there are people like that bring comfort from being funny. And so I that would probably be me. Like, it's just one of those things where you would basically make them feel comfortable by giving them an inside joke or something to take the edge off and stuff. And not all messages are serious, and it's nice to know that even on the other side there's a sense of humor
Absolutely, absolutely, and it generally will help. I mean, and it's I think the ones that are brought to people without with that I get in passing, or that I get from that it's they would have no other way to receive those. Like maybe they didn't. I mean, I've had ones that said I didn't believe and stuff like what you're doing until you crossed my path, and it was because they would have never came to me any other way.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful that I gave them that message that they needed.
Yeah, and it's got to be hard. It totally leads into what you're afraid of, and I was like, I totally get, like, because go ahead and tell people what you're afraid of.
I was afraid of my gift. I was absolutely terrified of my gift. I was terrified because of, I saw lower vibration energies and entities. I saw things that were negative. I saw things that would happen to people before it happened that were not very pleasant. And it terrified me, some of the stuff that I got. I mean, I've had friends that I knew before they passed that they were passing, and that there was nothing I could do to stop it. I mean, that is, and I couldn't tell them.
Yeah, that's a heavy burden for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I never thought about the negative side of the gift until that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
You just kind of, I guess, enjoy the time you have, and try to, I guess, maximize what you can. I would think in those situations. I don't know how that takes a lot of strength that I totally don't have, to be able to just kind of not just pull them by the shoulders and say, don't go.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
Yeah. All I know to do is to try to guide them in maybe the areas that they're not on the right path, and try to guide them into a place so that they can be at peace whenever they do pass. That's the biggest, I guess, concern that I would have, is just to make sure that when they do pass, that it's that their soul's at rest.
Yeah, no regret.
Yep. So it's that does I've had plenty of the opportunities that I've been brought into that had demonic or dark energies and things like that, and those were the things that finding out certain messages that were intense, and finding out or seeing certain things that were rather alarming.
Yeah.
Can leave you shaking a little bit in your pants for a second, until I learned, how to really get a grasp on all of the information. And I still have to take time to process it even now.
Mm-hmm. So as a parent, how does the gift work as a mom? Like, since you're a single parent, or you were a single parent, I don't know if you are still a single parent, but
I am.
how does parenting as a clairvoyanting?
My son hates it. I'll walk around the corner. I'll be like, hey, so you know what you were about to go do? Don't do it. And he'll be like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, look, I know. Okay. I know that you're about to do something stupid. I'm just saying, don't do it. Or, he gets busted all the time. And he's just like, why did I have you as a parent? And I'm like, it's so screwed up. You chose me, isn't it?
Well, but at the same time, I feel later in life, yes, right now it's frustrating, but it's not like you're doing it just to get back. It's a defense mechanism. It's not a
yes. He's only 13, so at this point, it's just trying to avert from any sort of stupidity on his part.
Well, you get into that age, and it's social dynamics, and it's survival of the fittest. That's we're all pack animals, and that's as a clairvoyant, even we're still a pack animal in spirit.
Yes. And
so you just try to find your
and he's
rank.
got the gift. Yeah, well, he's got the gift, and so my concern always is that especially when people are younger or in the beginning stages of their gifts, that they draw in a lot of the broken.
Yeah.
And he has, and always has, and so I have to be cautious of that and make sure that he understands that, because if not, it can get him into the wrong crowds, because he's just drawing into the people that are have dealt with some really harsh stuff very young in life. But I just try to bring them into the fold and help them through the process.
Yeah. And that, I'm sure, at some points it's a eye roll and a sigh, but I think time is the most valuable thing you can give a child. You just as much time as you can, And, that's what they remember. They don't remember the gifts you buy or the video games they remember the time you spend. And that's what lives in your memories is, just little moments of you spent with your family.
Yeah, much so. And it seems, he even though he wants to, put this off in a corner with the gifts because it makes him, he doesn't like some of the stuff that I get. It seems that it's his friends have at least found some, they'll find entertainment in it. So they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, read my crystals. And I'm like, sure. And then like halfway through it, they'll get up and they'll be like, okay, I'm done now. This has gotten weird.
And, that's just, you wanted me to read your crystals. So here we go.
Yeah. You asked. I didn't come up to you to try to do it.
Yeah. But it's also, some of it is just, again, they're trying to find their rank and prove themselves. And so sometimes it's not super intentional. Like they just want to, I guess, be the alpha. And so there's a lot of, I say there's some unspoken alpha dogging that usually happens with young boys and stuff to try to be the,
for sure.
And it gets frustrating and it's very simplistic. It's very misogynistic at times. It's hard because I don't know how I could, I've never had a kid and I don't know how I would be able to do it without losing my shit because it's just, but you look back on it and you remember. Oh,
but you do. You lose your shit. Any parent does eventually at some point.
But you look back on it and you did you can see where you tried to do the same things where you tried to be the guy that says something so funny that the rest of the class laughed and, it just, that's, you would say mean things just to try to get their approval. And it's just, you there's a guilt that comes with that. And it's just, even in my older age, it's like, there's so much guilt in things that I would say to get attention. And it's gotta be hard, and I get where your kid's coming from is having something that could easily be poked at and ridiculed and this and that. And you're constantly burdened with people saying things and, it's hard because at school you can't, there's no, at least at work or something, you can call in sick. You can't really call in sick to school that much and get away with it. It's like you're sharing an office with the same group of people for up to 12 years, which is a lot.
So thankfully he is the alpha male. He's bigger than most and has a strong personality. So at least he holds his weight in it. But he does still say that he wanted me to be a prostitute versus a medium because that's easier to explain.
And see, that kind of plays into your fear too, because it's like you're still trying to fight for acceptance as an adult that has accepted themselves, but now your kid is like kind of accepting it, but like not happy about it. Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah,
I've let it go.
Well, it's just like he has to learn how to accept it too. Like you want to kick and pout about it, but it's not going to change it. And so you learn that lesson of no matter how much you rail against something you don't like, sometimes what you don't like is not going to change. Very much so. This is real life. Like you can rail about the fact that you only make $50,000 a year, but you know what? At the end of the day, you're still making $50,000 a year. It's not going to all of a sudden change. And so it's kind of it's a learning process. And I applaud you as a parent and stuff to to be able to shrug that off and just say, I get it. I'm doing the best I can too.
Yeah, totally get it. I totally understand. And it was far from my first choice, and he's aware of that. That it was not the path that I wanted. I was corporate sales was what I'd always known. Yeah. So I tried to stay that path, and I even when I took this path the first time, I tried to go back to corporate, but was brought right back here. So it was definitely being divinely led. Yeah,
but I'm sure clairvoyance also helped with corporate sales and stuff because you can kind of tap into to what they're feeling and kind of lead them divinely into saying, hey, not I would say tricking, but I would say, at least saying, hey, this is a benefit to this. I know you're probably feeling hesitant and stuff like that, but believe me, this product will help you. Is it the end all be all? Absolutely not. but it
Yep.
is a start to doing something better.
Yeah, no, it did, and I guess that's probably a good reason that I generally stayed within the top, top tiers of any of the sales organizations I was with, is that I was able to kind of tap into that.
So, as a clairvoyant, like how do you just offer your services to people via the website, or they come to contact with you, or how do you get yourself out there? Do you like go to like we were talking about the I guess Southern Halloween spirit stuff, like the spiritual, they're like, is there places like that where you can kind of connect and expand?
Well, I do. I have obviously my website, and then I have a Facebook, and I'm on social media. And honestly, they 5 years in at this point, they get brought to me. I've gotten a good amount of referral basis, and especially once people have realized and recognized that I'm legit, and that I seem to come with good recommendations, that the business has just pretty much grown on its own, and it has been a very organic process. I've done some events where I go in and we'll talk at different forums, and we'll actually just introduce myself and kind of speak at those. But really, honestly, it's been just people that have been brought to me through social media or through different platforms online.
That's awesome, and again, that shows again that you're doing a wonderful job, because you're being referred by people that have spoken with you and just kind of growing it organically like that. I just didn't know if there was like something out there where you could just be like, you kind of like a meet and greet, like maybe, people with like-minded and stuff like that, where you could kind of find a group of people that, are like you and accept you and all that stuff, because it just seems like it would be
There are fairs.
Yeah,
there are fairs and events. But see, I changed cities in the middle of my business. And then right after that was when COVID hit. So a lot of those fairs and events and things like that had pretty much been all backburnered. So I was grateful that I had my business already established for some time, because at least I already had a good basis of people that actually had, knew who I was, because it really did help with being able to just be found at that point. And with COVID happening and a lot of unrest and people being unsure of things, it really did just bring people back around to me.
Yeah, I would say that right now you definitely, like, with all this stuff and so much, I guess, like you said, unrest and unknowing. And I was like, to me, I just like everybody's trying their best. I understand that if you don't like either who's in office or who was in office, I was like, they're all doing their best. Are they looking out for you absolutely personally with your goals in mind? Absolutely not.
No.
At some level, I have to write you off because I have bigger fish to fry. And so I think people get so intertwined in that sometimes, and I just is like, they're everybody's doing their best. It's not like they're intentionally telling you to go outside or to put a mask on, take a mask off. They're doing based on what they are. Is it perfect? No. Just like, hey, don't drive on ice, and you go drive on ice. Well, I'm going to drive on ice, even though they said they science, and you wreck. Well, they told you not to drive on ice. They're, just because that happened doesn't mean that they led you astray.
Right. Well, I think there is I think there's a lot of components that are going on that have all kind of, I guess, been going through this process. And I mean, everybody wants someone to blame. And honestly, I mean, what I was told and guided when this all first started was this is all spiritual warfare. I mean, it's, when COVID first started, I mean, and it was, honestly, because there needed to be a reset to our society, because there was so much that was, everybody was complaining that they don't have time with their families. They're all burnt out. They're all running, so fast and so hard, and they just don't ever have that, what they needed. And yet, when they did get the time, they were still angry.
Yeah, I would be angry too. Like I understand. I kind of liked it for a month, but I was like, man, this is like, I get why my dog gets excited to go outside. Like this was, it's a very, you don't realize like how much of a release like your job is from daily life. Like if you had to interact with your family all day every day, and you couldn't go out. There wasn't places you could go. No restaurants were open. This was closest to pioneer times as we'll ever get, because the only things that were open were grocery stores and gas stations.
Right.
And so there was no entertainment outside of Netflix or something that you stayed in house, and you were in those four walls, just like pioneer times. You were in those walls for the entire.
Which I think that on a lot of people's fears and burdens, I think that it also amplified some of the things that were already broken within our society, that really did just make things feel just even more amplified than what they were prior to that. So they started having to really look at their shit and their environment and what they had going on within their lives and their homes and everything else. And they had a choice. I mean, it was either change it or it can continue down this, same broken path. But it's your choice to change it and not live in such a in a way that you're so unsatisfied and unhappy.
So how did you, I guess, find like acceptance for all this? Because I was like, this had to be, again, like you said, you tried to bury it, you tried to work past it. Like, how did you get acceptance other than like being chosen and stuff and having everything basically break at one time? Like, I understand that that's how you chose it, but how did you come to agreements as, yes, this fit?
So I guess it was, the first time that I chose to step out of my comfort zone, because that's what I will say is probably the time that it really was that things totally, I guess, let me know at the impact or at the level that I was needing to accept these. My son was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at that time, and he had a friend that was at the gym that had passed, and that was under some, I guess, questionable terms as to what was happening to him. And the young boy kept coming to me and telling me, he was like, "You've got to tell my parents. You got to tell them that it was not, that I didn't do that on purpose. It was an accident." And I was like, "I barely know your parents. I just have them the high and the buys when I see them every day. I don't know. No, I don't." But I decided to step out on faith, and I asked her for coffee one day, and I was able to give her some information that all tied together and made sense as to what happened to her son. And at the moment, I recognized very easily and very quickly that she needed that peace, and that was able to give me the peace that I needed. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely a place of acceptance during that time.
What a great way to get it too, like from actually doing it and then seeing, I guess, the reward firsthand. Because, a lot of people do it and maybe they walk away in 3 days. Because, I mean, some of this stuff, I can imagine some of this stuff as they walk out of there, you don't get any kind of answer. Some people may break down right there, but I could see a lot of people just being like, get up from the chair, turn around, walk out, say nothing. And then maybe like 3 or 4 days later, when it hits them and they get through the whole process, maybe they call you back. But I could see that happening too, of people just like, and just go.
I've had it even 3 and 4 years later where they finally kind of showed back up. And it was, and then finally saying, just wanted to tell you what had happened. And I was like, 3 years later. Okay. Yep. But it honestly has never been for my peace. It's always been for theirs. So I have relinquished, being able to see how the things go afterwards. It just puts joy in my heart to know that they got what they needed. Yeah.
And it answers a lot of their questions that maybe have kept them up at night, or, just the questions as a parent or any loved one, did I do enough? Was it, because to some people, it's just, unfortunately, their defense is to take on that blame and just to say, what could I have done different that would have, changed it. There's a musical that's Dear Evan Hansen, where it's kind of like that, where where after the son commits suicide and, it's just this guy, invents this story. And, the parents kind of find closure by bringing him in and kind of doing the things that they they should have done with their child that they never got to do and that they kind of regretted. And
Yeah.
even though the climax is all of it comes around that this is all a sham or, stuff, they still found peace because they realized, that, it wasn't anything that they did. Sometimes kids just, fortunately, that's the only solution they can find. And
those are always the sad ones. And those are generally the ones that have the most messages. I have always found that the message seems to be, sorry, my dog is back here crying about life, but she's obviously emotional about this topic also. That they have the most that they want to share about it not being, that it wasn't anything that could have been done.
Yeah.
It seems those ones that have done that seem to be from suicide. There is so much that they want to share. And it's just so heavy.
Yeah. And I can imagine that because it's, as somebody that as a kid attempted that, you don't want them to feel like they're the ones that caused it. And you want to try to put them at ease as much as possible, that even though you don't want them to stop you. You want them to know that it wasn't anything they could have done. It was, that wasn't that they're a bad parent or assigning anything to that. And so I would totally get that. Like, it's got to be, one of the, I guess, tougher conversations and stuff to say, hey, some people just, unfortunately, they never find that acceptance. And that's what haunts them, is that they just never find that, I guess, peace, spiritual peace, that they always feel like they'll never be happy or satisfied, and they just don't want to live in this cycle.
Yep. It's very much a darkness. I see that a lot of times there's so many components to it, and it just honestly depends on where the person is, and also where the family is, as to what I can kind of explain to them as to where things went and why it happened. But it's just one of those things that I'm grateful to be able to give them that peace.
Has any other younger clairvoyants that want to, I guess, pursue their gifts have reached out to you to kind of maybe get some, I guess, guidance or, like workshop, or say, hey, what kind of, I guess, open themselves up?
Yeah, I actually have a development program that I do with people that are like I was in the beginning, where things were just out of control. I didn't really know how to tap into it. I didn't know how to stop certain things. I didn't know how to, I guess, safely handle all the different ins and outs. And so I have started a development program that is involving, some one-on-one coaching, along with some recorded classes to help them through that process, because it's so hard, because there is so much information out there. And unfortunately, there's some information that is that's incomplete, or maybe not even accurate, as to how you need to officially start your path. And then it makes it to where things can get a little turbulent. So I definitely did start a program to help with that.
That is amazing. Because again, like you said, you went through a lot, and to be able to help people say, okay, you're not crazy. You're not
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be that person, you're almost like, Danny from The Shining. Like you're helping, you're the old chef that's helping Danny understand his gift, and that, this is how you use it. This is how you can impact other people's lives with it. You can, and if you don't want to use it, that's fine too. But I'm here to tell you it's okay.
Well, it's okay. And how to step into a place of control.
Yeah.
Versus things being out of control. Because that's the big thing is that a lot of times when we're trying to shut our gifts off for so long, that we don't realize that they're actually more out of control when we don't step into that place than when we actually choose to step into it and make some decisions and actually choose to, take a different route with it.
That's awesome. Like, do you have like a vivid out of control moment? Is it just the Indian chief like putting?
No, oh, absolutely not. I mean, I had people that would be getting in bed with me at night. I would wake up to spirits that were in my bed. I would get, knocking on my wall. I would wake up to literally my bed being surrounded by spirits. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff that was happening it was out of control.
Mm-hmm.
There was no off button, which can leave you feeling very, very crazy and very, very exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interrupting sleep has got to be the worst part.
Yeah. And I was like, I just want to sleep. But of course, when I went to go to sleep was when my defenses were down the most. So that's when they really did heighten and it would get a lot more out of control. So that was, there was several times. I mean, that was all around my sleeping time that just were, I felt like things were just totally insane. I had a large entity that was in my door at one night that literally I stopped breathing. I mean, I could not breathe from what was in my doorway at that point. So it's, that's what I want to stop people from having to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially I want them to feel at ease with what they were naturally gifted.
Yeah. And to say, here's how you take that moment and you gain control. So
yeah.
What do you feel like when you say gain control? How do you gain control of that situation? Like, how do you?
You have to set ground rules. I think that everybody thinks that the spirit realm is in control, that they're just having to take it as to how they choose to control things, and that's not the case. You're the one that has to set those ground rules. You have to say what you want and what you don't want, and what you accept and what you don't accept. And until you set those ground rules, it's a free for all. It's like a room of toddlers that have no rules.
And I could totally see that too. Like if there is a lot of people trying to communicate, it's almost like, people in front of a microphone, like everybody's grabbing the mic, once they're, because even in the land of living, not everybody wants attention. And so I feel like maybe the spirit realm was, someone, you have few people that are giving you attention.
Yeah, well, somebody that sees me or somebody that can hear me, we all got to talk to them because they know that not everybody can see or hear them. Mm-hmm. So then that leads to, a lot of times you having, all kinds of ones that come to you and have things to say and have things to share. And, it's not always something that you can do something about. I had a little boy in my house at one point that I didn't know where he came from for the longest time until I actually talked to one of my girlfriends and told her the little boy, and I told her his name, and she goes, "Don't you watch the news?" And I was like, "No, I stopped watching the news years ago." And she was like, "There's a little boy that was with that name that was killed in a hit and run 3 days ago." And I was like, and that was before I took control of everything. So he was trying to get me to go find his parents. And I was like, "You don't even know who your parents are, and it'd be really weird to go knocking on their door."
Yeah.
So now it's more along the lines of if you bring them to me, if you bring the person to me and they can ask for my help, then I can help them. But you can't just show up and ask people to help them when I don't know who it is.
Yeah. That's a very good ground rule probably to have is, you don't want to, you only want to help people that want to be helped. Don't just throw more information to somebody that may not want to hear that or is not ready to hear that.
Right.
Which have you ever had that kind of client too that's come in that maybe they're not ready for it and you can kind of sense like you're opening a box that maybe you're not ready for, maybe you kind of slow play or, maybe you're not ready to hear what this person has to say?
Yes, I have. And that's always a tough one because I'm like, look, you're here, but you're not really totally here ready to hear everything. So, and I just always, I guess that's the reason that I made my, all my materials say I'm your no BS connection to spirit, because I want people to be aware that I'm not going to filter stuff. And they're going to get really direct messages. And sometimes those messages may not be exactly what they planned on getting.
Yeah.
But it's going to be honest. And it's going to be exactly what I'm being told to tell them. And and they've got to be prepared for that. And if they're not, I mean, I've had people that have denied certain messages, and then, after I've been like continued to tell them certain things that were literally confirming everything that I was saying, they had to kind of be like, okay, yeah, you're right. And I'm like,
Okay.
Why did it literally take me having to beat you over the head with like all these different information? You came to me because you wanted help.
Yeah. That's got to be frustrating as well. Is like, I'm not going to give you the answer you want. I'm giving you the answer I'm given.
Yep. No, I definitely is not going to always be the answer you want, but it'll definitely be the answer that they're telling me that you need.
So this is such an amazing conversation. Like, I'm just like, I can't, it's awesome that you've found yourself at peace with doing this, and that you've built your confidence, and you've set boundaries and everything else for this. Where can people find you on social media?
Clairvoyant Jess. So it's, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anywhere that's online. You can find me, or on YouTube, and you can or go to my website, which is just clairvoyantjess.com, and it'll have links to all my social media there. I
thank you again for doing this. This has been awesome. You're like, it's just amazing, and I'm so like excited that you've embraced this gift, and that you're confident with this gift, and that you've grown with it. And even though, maybe it wasn't your ideal choice, that you've come to enjoy and, I guess, grasp and embrace the good that it brings. And
yeah, very much so. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I've enjoyed it. So I hope it helps someone to understand that, sometimes we can take the fear out of some of the things that we're led to and embrace them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Jess.
Thank you.
So that was Jess. That was an extremely interesting conversation. I love those stories of all kinds of messages, and giving people closure, and how she processes that, and knowing that, even when she gets a message, that she goes back when she's not there and delivers that message, is just an awesome, awesome gift. I applaud her. I think it's amazing, and what an what a burden to have to deal with too, with people, fear wise and things like that, of people maybe being skeptical or not really being, I guess, open to that kind of gift. After the episode, she actually had a message from me for my grandfather, which was completely something I did not give her any details on or anything. She had just asked me if I was really close to my grandfather. I was, and I said yes, and she said that he was proud of me, and it was just such an interesting feeling of just, kind of shock, but at the same time, just being happy, and just having that, because my grandfather passed away when I couldn't see him. And so I did get to be with him when he was near the end, as far as, I guess, speaking wise. And so I never got to say everything I felt I wanted to. And so that was just an interesting afterthought, and I appreciated it. And it kind of geeked me out as well that she knew that. And it's just, you just kind of, you don't try to explain it. You just accept and just enjoy, that maybe that is the case. And you don't try to sit there and say, it's fake or anything like that. You just, wow, my grandfather sees what I'm doing as an adult, well, kind of an adult, and approves. So I thank Jess for that, as well as the interview. If you'd like to follow her, all her information's in the show notes. You can find her on all social media as Clairvoyant Jess, as well as clairvoyantjess.com. So check that stuff out. I think it's an amazing thing, too, to help young people that maybe have similar gifts to help them with getting, being an understanding and accepting person in their lives so that they don't go through the same struggles that maybe Jess did when she was younger. So I think that's also amazing. So thanks again. I did some shows. I did a show at the Dallas Comedy Club this weekend. Thanks again to some of the guests, Grace, Skylar, and Jacqueline, for attending. That was great. Great to have some fans. I actually connected with somebody from the Lizard Lounge on Saturday when I performed at Backdoor, so that was also really interesting. So it was great to catch up, and so I hope you guys are enjoying the episodes. I'll have some more. I just interviewed a few comics last couple weeks, so I have a few of those episodes as well as a couple more. So I'm still looking for more people to interview, so I will keep fighting the good fight and keep getting those interviews coming out, and hope you guys will listen. If you like what you hear, leave a review, 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it be Apple, Google, Spotify, any of them. Thanks again for listening and have a great week. And now some thank yous for the folks that make this show possible. Thanks to Barry Whitewater for my art and graphics. You can follow him on Instagram at bwhiteh2o. Get it? H2O like water. You can also follow him on Facebook, Music. A huge thank you to Gunnar Olsen for the wonderful music provided for this podcast. You can follow him on Instagram at gunbuns, that's GUNBUNS, as well as his website, gunnarolsen.net. Check out some of the samples that he has recorded. They're amazing. He's an amazing percussionist. If you want to follow the show, we've got a Facebook group, Some of All Fears. Instagram, Twitter, you can find us at Some Fear Fans. If you have some feedback for the show, email me at somefearfans, SOMEFEARFANS @gmail.com. I'll be happy to take those into consideration. Also, if you'd like to be a guest, email me at somefearfans @gmail.com. We can try to iron out some details and get that settled in. Give us some feedback if on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. It makes the show bigger, and it's not going anywhere. I'm going to record as many shows as I possibly can. If you want to follow me on social media, I am at Ryan Perio. It's RyanPerio on all social media platforms. You can follow me there, and you can check me out at ryanperio.com, my website. I'll try to list upcoming shows there as well. It's been kind of spotty because as soon as I set it up, that's when the pandemic happened. And everything's kind of just in a holding pattern. Thanks again for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Next week, we'll have another guest with another fear. Thanks for listening.